Nicolas Cage is probably one of our generation's definitive actors.
Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillard here. Hope everyone is keeping safe and well in the world right now.
And konnichiwa, Matt Guy here. Hope everybody is having a good end to May. Will it still be May when this comes out? I think it will be.
It will, yeah.
Chirpy, chirpy, cheep, cheep. Hello, everyone.
Gents, are we all right? Are we enjoying the late May sunshine?
It has been glorious, hasn't it, today at least? Driving back in the wonderful M5 gridlock traffic was a dream in my sweatbox.
Well, what about your car?
Well, yeah, exactly. No, it's been nice to have the weather over the last couple of days, to be fair, and it was good over last weekend as well. Having a walk over in Snowdonia was very, very pleasant.
The only thing about being so bright, though, I had to get the old blackout plastic on the windows again when I was watching Prehistoric Planet. Because I thought, like, you don't want to be missing any detail on that.
Are you sure that's what you were watching?
The Dolby Atmos as well. I wanted the atmosphere of the dinosaurs, since dinosaurs are amazing.
I mean, there were bones involved, Stu, but I wasn't sure if anything to do with prehistoric dinosaurs.
Well, when you look at them raptors with the little wings, it's so exciting. Yeah, they have actually gone full out. They've got little wings and a big tail as well, with feathers galore. you do kind of, it's like questioning everything you learned as a child. That these raptors are evil, and then they're actually not the like big fluffy chickens. Oh.
Jurassic Park has got a lot to answer for, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a point, actually. I bet they've pre-released the tickets now, haven't they, Stu? It's only the 10th of June that it comes out.
I ain't checked. Oh, no.
That's a day oneer for me, that is.
Yeah.
It isn't showing on the app at the moment for Wolverhampton, at least.
Give us what we want, Cineworld, you cowards.
When does anything ever show on the app, though?
True. There's 8 films showing on the app. That's how many film they have got currently running. Fucking shambles, that is.
It's all Top Gun-y.
Yeah, I bet they've taken up most of the screen. Yeah, looking at, like, Saturday the 28th of May, there's about 20 odd. I suppose you've got to give the people what they want. I think I'll be going probably not next week. Obviously, it's half term, so I think I might go the week after when it might be a bit quieter. Right, anyway, I suppose we can't put it off any longer. We're here to discuss 1984's Birdy. It's based on a book by William Wharton. Apparently this book was also the inspiration for The King of Birds by R.E.M. I mean, I guess you probably ain't going to know that one. Matt, are you an R.E.M. fan?
I don't mind a bit of R.E.M., but I always got the feeling that I just enjoy R.E.M. musically, but I think R.E.M. want you to enjoy it more than musically and think of it probably more as like an artistic piece, whereas I just like the jingy jangliness of it all.
Stu, is that your cup of tea? It's like sort of indie meets Americana, I suppose, might be the term for it.
Well, it's one of them, I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to it, but I wouldn't turn it off, depending on which one it is. It's just very meh, really.
Background noise.
Yeah.
And apparently also Birdy, it was turned into a play in the late 90s as well. So it's got a bit of a pedigree, this thing, but I think it may just be in America. Like, I don't know how much the Vietnam story has really permeated outside of America, really, because obviously that war is very unique to the USA, so they seem to have a lot of, I was going to say, daddy issues surrounding it, and it sort of is because, well, they took a beating on it, didn't they? So I think they do have issues, whereas to the rest of the world, we don't really give a shit because there weren't many other people who were involved in it. Vietnam is a very American thing, isn't it? I mean, if you take out maybe Apocalypse Now, I can't think of much that's really got into the consciousness in Britain, at least. Matt,
Mm,
Vietnam, what's the?
no, I don't. I can't think of anything like Full Metal Jacket. That was Vietnam, wasn't it? I
Yeah,
think. And apart from scenes in films like Forrest Gump, it's not Vietnam, but it's Vietnam in Tropic Thunder, I suppose. Those are the only films I can think of, but nothing that really, like, from a British point of view, we don't get into the weeds with it, really. We don't understand it. We don't know not the shame of Vietnam, because I don't know how Americans really see Vietnam now with two generations on's eyes or whatever, but it's not really our business to meddle, I don't think, in
no.
Vietnam.
Stu, is the Vietnam story, is it something that's ever really captured your interest?
Yeah. Platoon as well.
I think the thing is, sorry to cut you off there, Stu, when you look at something like, say, Platoon and Apocalypse Now, the stories around the war are so much more interesting. Like, it's about the duality of man and all that stuff, more so than exploring what Vietnam was about specifically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Then I got a clue what it was about. Even after all this, I mean, it was just an excuse to go and rape some innocent women. But I mean, probably the most famous thing to come out of it is 19 for us over here.
Yeah, probably.
But I suppose it's like the Falklands for everyone else. I mean, who probably cares about the Falklands other than us, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, from that point of view, don't really care. But it just seems to be one of them things that it's purely American and they're lost. So that it's amazing that it's even talked about at all.
Yeah, I think so. The cast, the only other real name to mention in this is Matthew Modine. He feels like quite not odd as such, but he's been in quite a lot of films. 116 when I looked on IMDb earlier. But he's not really an actor who has made a massive impact. But when you look at his earlier 80s stuff, especially with something like Full Metal Jacket, he looked like he was primed to break out. And then we didn't see a massive amount of him. And then he's come back, obviously, in Stranger Things Season 1. It felt like there's a massive gap in his career. Is there anything that I've missed out with Matthew Modine that really needs to have been seen?
I had no idea who he even was, and so it was only when I looked at his face on IMDb from what he looks like now. So I thought, even watching this film, I thought, I've no idea who this guy is.
I've seen his face. He's been in a few things that you've definitely seen.
He was in Dark Knight, either Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises. I can't remember which one. Or was it both?
Stewie was in The Transporter too.
No, that's what I mean. I know him now, but from looking at him from a youngster, I couldn't see the evolution there.
And we can't forget about 2004's Funky Monkey as well.
The other name on this one, director Alan Parker. Obviously, he's a director of note, like The Life of David Gale, Angela's Ashes, Evita, Road to Wellville, The Commitments, Fame, Bugsy Malone. Like, he's a director who is known for real-life stories, for noir-esque aesthetics, and brutal violence. And I feel like we're a little bit let down by that in this one. Maybe it's because it's his earliest work that we didn't get some of those flourishes that we get in later films. Especially like The Commitments is like, it's a cracking film, brilliant soundtrack, but there's a darkness to it as well. And I would have quite liked a bit of a darkness. I know we'll get into it in a bit, but I would have liked a little bit more of that. But Stu, I'm guessing you're a fan of The Commitments. That seems like that's up your street.
Oh, the band, The Commitments.
Yeah, they made the film of that, didn't they? So that's where it's all from.
Yeah. It's a blast from the past, even thinking about that, to be honest. But yeah, it's knowing that he was involved in this at all. It kind of got me excited, and then it came on. Yeah, you'd never in a million years think that this was the same guy if you put them side by side and you didn't know.
No, his auteur hadn't developed at this point in the slightest, I don't think.
No.
Right, okay, let's get on to the walkthrough. Actually, I better tell you first what the film's about. After two friends return home from the Vietnam War, one becomes mentally unstable and obsesses with becoming a bird. I think we'd all kind of hoped that it was going to be Nick Cage who was going to be obsessed with being a bird and we're going to get that crazy Cage. And that's not what we got. The film opens up with Birdy, that's Matthew Modine, staring out of a cell window, and Al, which is Nick Cage, with his face being bandaged whilst being wheeled through a hospital. Cage hops onto a train to visit his friend. We get flashbacks to Al playing baseball in the sandlot with some local street urchins when he hits a ball so hard it lands in Birdy's backyard. This all seems really odd. Like, Nick Cage looks mid-20s at this point. I think he just turned 20, but he looked older than that. And he's just hanging around with a bunch of kids at the beginning, including this girl who he's making out with. Like, she looks 13 and he looks older than us. Like, it's really super weird at the beginning, and it was a bit uncomfortable because I assume he was supposed to be a similar age to these kids who were coming up to his waist. Very bizarre.
Even Birdy as well. You think that Birdy himself is a similar kind of age?
Is that Fast and Furious?
Wowzers.
Wensfield Drift. Yeah, Birdy does not seem the similar age at all, yet he kind of made out to think that he is, the way how odd he is and he's the outcast kid. It's sort of, it screams 80s with this kind of thing because this happened over and over again. It seems like things like the Goonies, which was, he was you got the older brother who it's never really explained why he's hanging around with his younger sibling and their friends. It's all a bit weird.
Do you think we're gonna get this with Stranger Things 4 now that they're they're gonna look like they're in their 20-somethings when we're still expecting them to be like kids?
There is a little bit of that, isn't there? Yeah. So Birdy is a strange, awkward loner who, in some convoluted way, ends up befriending Al. They go pigeon hunting together so that Birdy can train them to be carrier birds. Birdy makes a suit out of the feathers for both himself and Al to wear. While suited up, they go hunting pigeons again one night, whilst atop one of the buildings in this industrial estate. Reaching out to grab some pigeons, Birdy slips and attempts to fly to this sand pile below, making the landing, hurting himself, but believing that he flew. We then cut back to the present day where Al arrives at Birdy's cell. We discover that Birdy has had some kind of breakdown, possibly attributed to his time in the military, but his doctor is unsure about what caused this, but if he doesn't snap out of it soon, he's going to be sent to the loony bin. Birdy is a mute, squatting and bouncing around his cell, hiding away, not even talking to Al when he comes into his cell, basically acting bird-like. That's just under half an hour there. How did we think this was going to go after the first half an hour? Were you intrigued? Stu, what are your thoughts?
I hated it. I was so bored. And again, I think the expectations were heightened when we talked about it last week about the synopsis of it, and we kind of expected the other way around, like you said earlier. And it was just really... I know we said it's half hour in, but it was so slow. And it felt like an hour. And I wasn't even remotely tired when I put it on. And I was sitting there, I think, oh God, how long? This is going to be a proper slog. And even though there was funny bits like the pigeon suit and when they're climbing and when they're trying to cross that bridge and the fact that he's just getting pigeons anyway, he's just mad. But the funny bits are not there anywhere near as much as they could have been, and it's not even dark enough to be kind of depressing. It's just a bit shit. And I'll put in the things that this is going to be one of these as soon as it got to that point, and I thought, oh no. So yeah, I wasn't overly enthusiastic about it after half hour.
Matt, were you anti this movie straight off? Or?
Yeah, I just didn't know how they could drag another 90 minutes out of what I was watching. That's the thing. Like I just couldn't see how they can justify it or what they're going to do to keep me. Because I was going to watch it regardless, But if this was on the telly or in the cinema, I'd have walked out. Like, I'm not committing another 90 minutes to this if I hadn't have had to have watched it for our dear listener.
Yeah, I'm completely the same. I was immediately bored. I went in with my backup because, as you know, I don't care for war films. So I was already thinking I'm not going to enjoy this. And then it started slow as fuck. And not even in like a tantalising way, like this is about to ramp up. And I thought, no, this is just going to get slower. And it did. So, yeah, it was a bad start. It was a bad start. We go back to the flashback now. Birdy's mom is destroying Birdy's aviary following his fall. Birdy and Al decide to tackle a new challenge together to rebuild an old Ford. After fixing up this scrap heap car, Al and Birdy take the car to the ocean. Birdy diving deep into the water and Al stood annoyed on the beach. He wants to go and get chicks on the boardwalk. Eventually, Al persuades Birdy to go on a roller coaster where Birdy sits and flaps his arms like a bird throughout the whole ride. They really try to show Birdy's unusualness here. Like, both boys end up with a girl, and whilst Al is fooling around in the sand with his girl, Birdy is sat chatting to her about holding his breath and generally being really socially awkward. And not in an endearing way or in a funny way, just in a weird, I don't like anyone in this film way.
Yeah, it was a tough watch, really, for reasons I'll go into later. But, you know, they're really hamming home that he's emotionally and maturely not up to speed. You know, in a way that we felt like a bit exploitative, if I'm honest. I don't know, this is a piece of its time, but other films do it, and we'll get into it more later. But other films do it without it feeling quite as much of a watching an animal at the zoo kind of way.
I mean, let's put it right. He's mentally retarded. That's what they're making out to be. He's very much on the spectrum.
So what he's suffering from is schizophrenia. So he's a long term, like a chronic version of psychosis. Is what he's delusions, isn't it?
Yeah, what it turns into afterwards.
Yeah, and but you know, at first though, and I don't know if this is just a concept, you know, a product of the time that when this film was made and what it wants it to be. Like maybe this film is way cleverer than I thought it was, and it's a critique on the way that we handle the mentally ill, but it never really feels that way. It never feels like it's anything more than being a bit taking the piss out of it a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's the 80s, of course it is.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a note here. Are we supposed to believe that he's on the spectrum? Because if he is, it's never explained. There's never any context really given to whatever challenges that Birdy is facing. It's just there. And I feel that without that context, it really detracts from the movie. I think if they'd have given us some kind of explanation at the end, they could have rescued it into being mediocre rather than terrible, I think.
I think this is one of these where we're watching it now with a modern eye and knowing these things and knowing what we do know, compared to people in the 80s who generally saw the weird kid as being the oddball.
I don't know, though.
It doesn't even need to be explained because, well, as soon as you see him there on his porch and you think, okay, he's the odd kid then. It's like you're never going to get explained.
We get films, though, that are from that time period that tackle it in a more sensitive way than this, even when they are making it funny, like Rain Man. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So the boys get arrested. Al's father sells their car without their knowledge. Birdy gets angry with him, wanting his car back, arguing with Al's dad, threatening to call the police on him. That's the only time we ever see the only time we ever see Birdy as something other than this meek little bird man. Like, he actually shows a bit of aggression. The only other side to him we see, which is
that scene
weird.
when he's arguing with his dad. Well, Nick Cage's dad in the house is actually quite good, really. Like the back and forth was quite refreshing to see, and that they played this. I can't remember the exact phrase, but Nick Cage's character mentions that he's never been able to stand up to his dad, and all of a sudden Birdie's now not the alpha, but this is someone to look up to, whereas that's probably the only time in this film that happens, really.
Yeah. We then go back to the present day. Al is in Birdie's cell. Al is getting frustrated with Birdie, that he's acting as though he's transformed into a bird and he needs to pull his shit together. Al remains at the hospital trying to help Birdie, feeding him and looking after him, getting frustrated by the lack of progress he's been able to make with Birdie, who is still mute and in this bird-like phase. That's an hour at that point, and it felt like a day. Like, we're at the halfway point of the movie now. Nothing's happened in this film, and none of the flashbacks tie into the modern day stuff. I'm baffled with it. I really don't get it. Stu, explain it to me if you can.
It was at this point I went to get some Haribo to keep myself awake, because I was so. When I even said this is going to replace Next as the worst one we've watched in the last 2 years, and spoilers, it is. It's terrible, rubbish, and it was the same thing. I mean, you can the highlights already, but some of the things that he does is just funny because it's weird. The feather suit and the talk on the beach about what boobs are for. That was quite fun. But that's in an hour, and you're thinking,
it's not enough, is it?
When you can't even list the good parts on one hand, it kind of speaks for itself.
Matt, are you excited going into the second half?
I mean, it picked up a bit for me. Now we're starting to see the transformation from, his slow decline. It picked up a little bit, I suppose, but it's still not nothing. I'm still constantly checking how long VLC has left. I'm still, thinking, oh, right, I'm gonna go pause this while I do something else. A good film, I can't pause because I want to know what's going on. I paused and paused and paused and went and did other stuff, come back, went and did other stuff, come back. And a good film, you don't do that, do you?
No. I mean, it took me 5 nights to write this up. Because obviously I did 2 watches of the film, one to watch it and then one to make the notes. And it took me 2 nights to watch it, because I watched an hour and then had to turn it off and then watch the second hour the next night. I did exactly the same when I was making the notes. It shouldn't take me 4 nights to watch the film twice. And then obviously it took the 5th night to write up the rest of it. That's just, yeah. Anyway, in the flashback, Birdie talks to his father, who tells him that he and his mother are worried about Birdie because of his obsession and not having any practical interests, or really any interest at all that doesn't flap. Birdie gets another canary, which he named Alfonso after Al. We see Birdie is becoming a little more obsessed, talking to the birds in their own language. And his workout routine just consisted of him lying on a bench flapping his arms. It's really odd. But I do have to say, how incredible did Nick Cage look in that workout scene?
Ridiculous. He did look ridiculously ripped, yeah, I know.
Incredible. Al and Birdie go to a landfill site as Birdie has built himself a set of wings. Al cycles as fast as he can and Birdie jumps off the front of the bike and flaps the wings, landing face first into a small pool, which must surely be dumpster water, so that's kind of rancid. The boys then try to pick up stray dogs for the pound, and then we get the next flashback. We get a cat getting into Birdie's room and attacking one of Birdie's canaries. I realised, this was the point where I realised that none of these flashbacks were tying into anything that was actually going on. They weren't really explaining why his obsession was getting worse with birds. It's just that it was. And I feel like you need to tell us why it's happening, not just that it is happening.
Well, it was at this point that I assumed that the flashbacks weren't real. Because the bird that is in the fucking cat's mouth all of a sudden makes this Lazarus reincarnation and starts flying around and everything else, and I just assumed at this point we're now tying into his delusions now, and I assumed at some point like the Birdman film, we're gonna see him fucking become a bird. Like I didn't. I thought, oh, okay, right, this is where we're going with it now. We all of a sudden we're going to be his delusion. And it wasn't even fun enough to do that.
No. There was a bit later on which I thought maybe it was a delusion, but we'll get to that bit.
I got it completely differently. I just thought that it was the flashbacks were in a different order than what we were shown. I thought this is going to be a weird kind of Pulp Fiction like kind of thing where you have to watch it a second time and piece it together later. The fact that you ever mention it is probably not right at all, and I'm giving it too much credit. But I have seen that though before when birds play dead and then they resurrect themselves. That does happen.
Well, I think I don't know if this is how true this is, but I'm sure that like if a bird gets bit by a cat, that's a death sentence for a bird. I'm sure there's some kind of not poison, but like specific with cats to birds. Like it does them, it kills them off like slowly, kills them off. Like there's nothing you can do about it. Like I remember when one of my cats got a bird in the garden, and I took it to like a vet. And they were like, yeah, it's like, it doesn't look done for here. Like it's moving around, but it will be dead. Like
it wasn't punctured though, was it? To be fair to it.
Is that what might have been what would be the issue then?
Well, you know what, like when cats bite you sometimes and you get that kind of rash, don't you, sometimes? Like if they've got their like cat juice in you. But you know, you get that kind of reaction sometimes from cat saliva. So
okay,
maybe that's something to do with that. I don't think they got cat to bird venom. I think it might just be something in their spit that just reacts to birds weirdly.
I'm fairly certain this was how the plot to No Time to Die came about. cat to bird venom.
Right, where are we in this? Right, okay. Al is getting more angry back in the present day. Birdy is still in his bird delusions, and the psychiatrist will send him to the madhouse and throw away the key if he doesn't snap out of it soon. Al is struggling to see the shell of a man that his best friend has become. Back to the flashback. Birdy is at a school dance. His date drives into a secluded area after the dance and tries it on with him. She takes her top off and Birdy just flops her titties around. I don't know, like it wasn't funny. It was almost disturbing and completely unnecessary to the rest of the story. Like they didn't do any sex and then she just drops him off back home. I don't know what was happening there.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to give this film too much credit, if I'm honest. But I assumed they were trying to just say that like everybody is just trying to be what everybody else thinks they should be, and she thinks that she should just have sex on prom night, and then she's like, fuck, and he's like, fuck, and nothing. Like, John, I don't know if this film is just trying to say that we're all just trying to muddle on in the world and blah, 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 blah. But actually, I don't think this film is doing that. I just think that it was just bad.
Yeah. I thought something similar. I thought she was as like the female version of him in a weird way, where she was that like socially awkward as well. And like when she says, this is what, I'll give you what you want or something like that. And then she takes the top off and then he does the jiggle. And wasn't even 80s boobs either, very, very 90s for the time. If we're ranking them as we should do. Yeah, that's what I got that from it as well. Maybe it is. Maybe it's the most clever film in the world and we just too thick to realise.
Just nowhere near it. Yeah, could be. We go back to the present day and it's the same shit that we've seen every fucking time we've been in the present day. We then get another flashback to Al being the victim of a bomb attack in the woods in Vietnam. A bomb exploding near him, and that's the reason why he's been in the hospital and why he's got the bandaging on his face. He sees a lot of his military buddies die around him, and that's why he's struggling to see his friend Birdy like he is now. He's scared of losing another one. Get a flashback. Morning after the school dance, Birdy tells Al that he flew. Back to the present, the doctor tells Al there's nothing they can do to help Birdy anymore. Another flashback. Al leaves for Vietnam. Birdy's canary flies off, and then the canary comes back flying so hard that it smashes through the window and then kills itself. I'm sorry, but what? We see Al following the bomb in Vietnam. He's been transported to the hospital. The cops that he was in crashes. Everyone is dead except for Birdy. Now, this is the point where I thought, is this all a delusion? Because we see Al in the helicopter, and then the helicopter goes off screen, and we hear it crash, and then it cuts to Birdy. But at no point have we seen or even heard anything about Birdy signing up to the military.
Mm.
So I was really confused because he wasn't in that helicopter. Well, I don't think he was. He doesn't seem like it. And he's just randomly in this war where we've got no reason to think he even enlisted.
Well, I wondered the whole way through why Al or why Birdie was in a military hospital. I couldn't work it out. Because no, you'd think there would be a scene that shows them enlisting together or something.
Yeah.
Yet there wasn't, and I got really confused by the whole thing. I was like, why is he even here? But
because the only scene they show is when Al says goodbye to him because he has enlisted, and he leaves him behind. So there's just no, I don't know. I almost feel, you read a book and you accidentally turn over 2 pages at once. I felt like that. I'm like, I feel like I've missed 2 pages worth of stuff here. It just doesn't make any sense at all to me. In the present day, Al breaks down, telling Birdy that he can't do anything without him, how he's scared and that the world outside of their friendship would just finish him off. Birdy finally speaks, telling Al that he's full of shit. The doctors and orderlies come in, and Birdy doesn't talk to them. Only once they leave does he talk to Al again. The boys stage an escape, climbing to the top of the building. Birdy jumps off, seemingly to his death. Al runs over to the side of the building, only to see there's a building below, a few feet lower. Birdy looks up at him and asks, "What?" What indeed, Birdy? What was that? So that was the third act, clocking in at just under 2 hours. How did we feel about the ending, Matt?
The ending, whilst it did give me a wry smile, like the actual gag of him like jumping off, and then unfortunately I was giving it a lot of credit up to this point, thinking actually, it's talking about how people don't understand mental health, people don't understand this, people don't understand that. But then it kind of just trivialized it at the end with this gag. And whilst I enjoyed the gag, it just then automatically took away what ended up being what I was thinking. Okay, this is okay at the end, and then he just took it away in in an instant. So it was a metaphorical roller coaster, but unfortunately, that roller coaster was the one where that girl lost her leg. The Smiler, whatever it was.
Would it have been better if Birdy had actually flown off the building?
Well, actually flown.
Actually flown off the building, yeah.
I think, it's the Inception ending. I guess it's like, well, what happened here? Then, you never know, what was going on. I think it probably would have been. This is it's like a tale of two editors, really. Maybe one quit halfway through, and so they decided to change the direction of the film, midway through the edit or something. I don't know, but the ending for me, then it really ruined it, sadly, because it did hook me a little bit in the third act, but
Not enough. Stu, should he have flown off the building?
Yeah, similar. I mean, when he looked over the side and he was just there, and then it ended, it was very much like, well, why? I mean, I would kind of prefer it if he'd have been splattered to death on the floor, and then okay, fine, he couldn't cope, he couldn't snap out of it. This was his destiny, and ended it on a really sad note. I'm going to give him more credit then. But the fact that that's out of nowhere, I mean, there's two times in this film. There's the one where he's having a go at Al's dad, like we've already mentioned, and then this where he's like completely normal, and he's not socially awkward, and he's doing something funny, and you think, well, if you're capable of doing this, and there was times in the hospital in what you think is present day, who knows, when he does seem to snap out of it and he's completely fine. And I thought, is this all an act? Is it just playing along? God knows. I mean, I was happy that it was over, but I had more questions at the end than after halfway through it, which
Yeah.
is a very odd situation to be in.
I completely agree. I think when he just turns around and says what, it just cheapens everything that's come before it in the present day scenes. Because it makes me think that at no point did he actually have this delusion that he was a bird, that he was just playing, and that it was just an insult to people who suffer with actual genuine mental health issues. I think it would have been better if he flew, just because it would have been a different ending to what we got, and I felt the ending we got was really cheap. He should have either died or flown, and just left it to the audience. What they gave us was a shit sandwich. It just wasn't enough.
Yeah, or like that's the Inception ending, and just you never know what happened. You just look over the edge, and then the credits come up.
Yeah,
maybe that would have been even
happier
better
with that.
Yeah,
I agree. Right, so Birdy received 1.4 million domestic box office. I don't think it was released internationally, which is quite odd when the director's a Brit. That was against a budget of 12 million, which is quite a big budget for a 1984 movie. 1984 was a grand old year for the cinema, though. This is the top 12 from 12 to 1. Purple Rain, Splash, Romancing the Stone, Terms of Endearment, Star Trek 3, Search for Spock, Beverly Hills Cop, Footloose, Police Academy, Karate Kid, Gremlins, Temple of Doom, and number 1 with a whopping $229 million was Ghostbusters. Like 1984 sounds like it was a really good year, but it's also a damning indictment of the current state of cinema. So there's only 2 sequels in that list, Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, and Star Trek 3. But we're still getting Indiana Jones films. We're still getting Ghostbusters, Karate Kid, Star Trek, Footloose, all within the last decade have either been rebooted or given a sequel. We're getting Gremlins next year. There's been rumours of a Beverly Hills, either a 4th or a reboot. Same for Police Academy and Splash as well. So that list looks great, but we're still living off 1984. We're 38 years down the line at this point. And our cinema still looks like that, which is quite terrible, to be perfectly honest.
This is the first one of these where I've seen every single one on that list.
I think Star Trek's the only one I haven't seen. Even including like most of the sequels and remakes as well. So before I give you the scores on the ratings, I want you to tell me what you think they will be. Stu.
I mean, it's one of these where it could really surprise me. I mean, obviously the audience is going to be really bad. I mean, the fact that it's made hardly any money back, I'm guessing the audience is going to be around about like I don't know, 40-ish, so 4.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think critics would probably love it because it's just fucking odd. Critics 7. I'll go with that.
Matt?
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned, because I had to cheat and I had to look this up because I was so perplexed at the end. I had to know what the people thought. I couldn't wait to find out. So I know what it is.
Okay.
And I'm fucking baffled by it.
Yeah. So IMDb is a 7.1, which stunned me. Absolutely stunned me. The Rotten Tomatoes audience score and critical score, there was 1% difference. The audience was an 83 and the critical was an 84.
What?
I'm stunned. I genuinely cannot put into words how they've come to that. I just don't fucking get it. So Roger Ebert said, a very strange and beautiful movie. Janet Maslin from New York Times, most of Birdy is enchanting. A more recent review is from Matt Brunson. This is from May 2021. He said, it sounds borderline precious and pretentious, but it's anything but. A few critics didn't chime with it though. Yasser Medina, also from last year, it relies on a good performance from Matthew Modine and Nick Cage to draw a speech of repressed emotions and the traumatic wounds of war. But in my opinion, its regular and repetitive narrative lacks strength. I do wonder how much of this critical love comes from a yearning for Americana and the American way of life post Vietnam War. Because Yasser Medina's a Spanish speaking person. I think he's from South America, so he obviously doesn't have that same connection. Whereas the other three critics I mentioned are all Americans, and they all love it. So I do wonder how much of the American psyche affects the reviews with that. I don't know. The fan response, this isn't even on the UK Amazon. Like, it just isn't there. So I have to go to the US version to find out where it sits at a 4.5 out of 5, with 95% of the reviews getting 3 or more stars. I've only got one for you because it's a little bit longer. R. Walker gave it a 5-star review. Directed by the great Alan Parker, starring the very young Nicolas Cage and Matthew Modine, who both give performances that guys twice their age would have found hard to match. Credit must also go to Alan Parker, who took this literary World War II classic book and, with a superb updated screenplay, now set in Vietnam, makes this amazing, complex story even more accessible to people who don't read classics. Big kudos to Peter Gabriel for creating the wonderful, hypnotic yet powerful music soundtrack. That'd be Peter Gabriel of Sledgehammer fame.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And the superb cinematography for making this an underrated classic. Remember, this was before CGI, yet the camera flies like one of the birds. It still rings true after all these years. If you don't laugh and cry during this movie, you are probably 1, retarded, or 2, a sociopath who should seek professional help.
Wow.
Yeah, fucking hell. Right, Stu, good, bad, and crazy, please.
I mean, you just mentioned it there. That scene where it seemed like drone footage, which obviously couldn't have been in the 80s. God knows how that was done. That was amazing. It really is like clutching at feathers, I suppose, with this kind of, because there's not much. I already mentioned the boob gag, which was funny, and I don't know. I honestly don't know what to say because it's so awful. There's nothing about this film that I enjoyed, really. I mean, we've already mentioned how much of a slog it was to get through, but some of the camera work was good, I suppose. And the idea maybe was there. And the pigeon, the little yellow canary thing killing itself was quite funny. But again, you're looking at, you're trying to find things. I mean, let's just get to the bad. The bad is everything else. Because it's slow. It's way too slow. It could have been an hour and a half, and half of this shit doesn't even matter anyway. When the cutbacks to the asylum, it's the same thing over and over again for 2 hours. Like, nothing changes. Like, the weird thing about you didn't even mention about the guy who just spits on things for no reason at all. What was that all about? Is that like another way of, oh yeah, this guy come back from Vietnam and now he spits on things? Well, okay, fair enough. So everything's just seemed a bit weird, and so if it was just played for like a surreal masterpiece, bring it on. I enjoyed that, but it doesn't know what it wants to be. I think that that's a detriment to everything about it. And I mean, the crazy is the fact that people like it. I don't generally understand.
Not just like it, people love it. Yeah.
I don't understand. And it, just lost for words.
I think we need to give a shout out to our American brethren. Get in contact and can you explain why people like this film? Like, and if you're English as well, if you like this film, can you explain what's good about it? Please, cagefightingpod@gmail.com or at cagefightingpod on the socials. I need to know because I'm baffled. Matt, good, bad, and crazy, please, sir.
So the good, there are some themes here, and there are some things that are going on that interested me, around the mental health side, and there was some decent attempts at character development. So when Birdy is talking to his dad on a couple of occasions, there's some like heartfelt moments between two people that clearly love each other, and the dad like just wants the best for his son and wants him to do better than he did, and being this janitor in a school cleaning up prom kids sick. Do you know what I mean? Like there's clearly there is some heart to this, and you know Birdy and Al clearly love each other, and you know the power of friendship and all that. But the bad is these themes are so badly delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like mentioned about the ending was like, you know, really cheapened the whole thing. You know, we've not really mentioned about how Al clearly has, it's not like body dysmorphia or anything, but he's so upset about his appearance now and everything else, and everything that comes with that. And you know, there's nobody that's happy in this film. There's not a single soul that's happy in this film. Everybody's got problems, and whether that's a metaphor for that's what this film is trying to say, that everyone has issues, severe, minor, this is how we live with it kind of thing. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. I don't know. The crazy is this is normally the kind of hipster nonsense that you lap up, Andy, and even you hate it. That's got to stand for something. Do you know what I mean? This is the kind of thing that in my head gets standing ovations at film festivals, and that's why I would never be a part of that world, because I just don't understand what other people see. This is high Paris fashion when people walk around in inflated bin bags down a runway and then we're expected to enjoy it because it's just fashion. That's what this film is, essentially. I just don't understand it, but I think you're meant to respect it, and I just don't.
I wonder how much of that is that the film needs to be a whole lot weirder to be artistic, and it's not weird enough. It's a little bit too, I dare say, real life.
If I can lynch this bad boy up.
Yeah, that's what it needed, like a proper off-the-wall bonkers director, not someone who's used to doing, or who goes on to do real-life tales. It just didn't work. So my good, it's very much the technical side of things. I thought that Alan Parker did a good job directing some of the scenes. The interaction between the friends was good. That's really where it ends for me, because the rest of this film, it's all about the vibe rather than actually anything happening. There's no real story to any of this movie, to be perfectly honest. They're all just little snippets of a larger tale that you never get to see what's really going on, so it felt a bit pointless. It lacks any real cohesion and clarity to the message. Like, I feel like the message is supposed to be the scars of war, but we only got that in the last half an hour or so with Cage's breakdown in the mental hospital with Birdy, and he didn't really go far enough to really show that. And the rest of the the rest of the 75%, the 90 minutes, was just a higgledy-piggledy story about just the odd day in the life of. Like, a film is supposed to be about an extraordinary day in someone's ordinary life. And this just wasn't. This was just an ordinary day in ordinary people's lives, and there was nothing interesting about it. It just failed miserably for me.
I mean,
Crazy.
Why?
Oh, sorry, Stu.
Why on earth was La Bamba in it?
Good question. Yeah. The
Does it-
crazy.
I mean, that was probably one of the highlights of the film. So I love that song, and it doesn't fit anywhere.
No, it doesn't. It's completely out of place.
It was used about 3 times.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know of any of the choices that they made for most of this film. Apparently, Nicolas Cage had some baby teeth when this film started rolling. He was 20 years old at this point, and he still had some baby teeth, which he had removed without anaesthetic. So, like, he bled for his course, like, pretty much realistically. The other thing I wanted to mention was something that you picked up on, Stu. This was the first use of Skycam on a film. So it was held up by wires supported by cranes and controlled by a computer. like it's quite amazing to think that that piece of technology, which has then gone on to be used in all these other movies, was wasted by debuting in a movie like this. So it wasn't a drone, but like it was as close to a drone as you could get in 1984.
Oh, so it was a bit like the spider cam things that we have at football.
Yeah, basically. It was the guy who invented the Steadicam who invented the technology to do that. Which it is kind of amazing. Like
Yeah.
the technical side of things was quite good in this movie. It was just the rest of it wasn't. So I mean I've got to ask the question, did you enjoy the film, Matt?
In very, very, very small parts, but if you need a binary yes or no answer, then of course it's a no, and I won't trouble it to be watched again. And Stuart Hall, there was absolutely no fucking need for me to watch this in 1080p either.
No, definitely wasn't. Stu,
Well,
just say no.
yeah. Trying to think of a metaphor. There's just nothing, is there? There's nothing left to give. No, I hated this film.
Yeah, I found it really tedious. The flashback stories didn't add any colour to what was going on in the present day, and really, what's the point in having the flashback stories if they're not going to inform the present? It was just a bunch of loose, overlong series of escapades. It was crap. I really struggled to put any other word than it was just crap. So based on this film and this film alone, was Nicolas Cage good or bad? Stu?
I don't think he was. It's going to be bad because, I mean, he wasn't the best thing about this film, was he? And you'd think he would be. Yeah, I'm just going to say that. I mean, other than looking ripped for probably the first time that we've seen, yeah, he wouldn't get much work on the back of this. Just say that.
Matt, do you agree?
It's really hard, actually. This is a really tough question because, there's no lack of effort here. He's been in better films and had worse performances because of a lack of effort.
Mm-hmm.
He gives it his all, like the scenes at the end, when he gives it his all, but he isn't. You could replace Nick Cage with any actor, and I think you have the same result regardless in this film. I don't think Nick Cage brings anything to this film, so it would have to be a no.
Okay. I'm going to say yes, just because I don't think the script and the story was strong enough to really support him. But I think what he did with what he was given was fine. I wouldn't say he was good, I just don't think he was bad. So I'm going to give him a pass on this one. Just like you said, there was a couple of scenes, especially towards the end, where you were seeing him struggle and break down. I think with a much stronger, tighter script in the preceding 80% of the film, that last 20 minutes would have popped. So I'm going to give him a pass on this one, just for the last 20% of this film. I think he did a really good job. So, yeah. And like you said, Matt, this is never getting watched again anyway, so fuck it. It doesn't matter. Right, finish the sentence then. If you enjoyed Birdy, you might also like. Matt?
Rain Man, as I mentioned it earlier. It's completely different conditions that they're talking about. But if you enjoyed the elements of heart about this film, and there is a few, you'll enjoy Rain Man. Tom Cruise, playboy, businessman, absolutely doesn't care for Raymond. But as the film progresses, he understands more, and he understands how actually special he is, and not special in a derogatory way, like the skills that he has, and being a savant, and having autism, and by the end of it is a genuine tearjerker, and it's just a great, and it deserves all the critical acclaim that it gets. It doesn't do it in a mawkish way either, and it's just a wonderful film. Well worth the time watching it if you haven't seen it already.
Once I've watched Top Gun Maverick in a couple of weeks' time, I really want us to do an episode just about Tom Cruise. I know we don't usually do specific episodes, but I feel like Tom Cruise is a really interesting superstar, but actually a genuinely good actor as well. Like he straddles the line between both. I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about Tom Cruise. So I think I'm going to make a note of that, and I'll see what we can come up with for that. But really good choice that one is as well. Stu?
I mean, if you enjoy this, then you deserve to be in the mental hospital that they're based on. There's a lot of them in there. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind with this would be something like The Deer Hunter, if you want a bit of a proper actual film that deals with the effects of war. I think it's Vietnam, is it? It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah.
De Niro classic, a proper superb film. It's well made and you can understand. So, yeah, The Deer Hunter.
I didn't like The Deer Hunter. And like, I loved De Niro, but just didn't do it for me. I found it a bit overlong. I preferred, is it The Reindeer Games? It's a Christmas film loosely based on it. It's fucking ridiculous, but that was fun. But yeah. For me, I've got two. Full Metal Jacket. It's a better Matthew Modine film, better Matthew Modine performance. It's a better Vietnam film. It's a better anti-war film. It's a better film about mental health struggles. It's just a better film than this. So I implore you to watch that. And the other one, Forrest Gump. I think he does what this film tries to do, but just a lot better. He tells a good story of a person and his relationships through time, and also does touch on issues around post-war life. So, yeah, Forrest Gump, which isn't something I normally would recommend because I don't think that's a great film, but you know what I think about Hanks. But I think it's this film, but a lot better.
I was adamant, and I avoided it just so it didn't clash. I imagine we all did, and obviously One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as well, with the bird thing as well. Talks very much in depth about the way that we handle mental health and the stigmas attached to it, and in many ways, I don't know which one came first in this, the chicken or the egg, no pun intended. But there are a lot of similarities between the two films, and obviously one is a lot better than the other. Did any of you watch Ratched on Netflix? Netflix? I'm not sure if it was Netflix or Prime or whatever. They did like the prequel of Nurse Ratched.
I didn't see it, but I heard very good things. Because it's the guys who did American Horror Story, if I remember correctly. And it's Sarah Paulson, isn't it, who is always excellent. So yeah, that's
one to watch.
Yeah, I think so. Right, that's another Nick Cage movie in the record books. If you've seen this one or any others, please get in contact. cagefightingpod@gmail.com or on the socials @cagefightingpod. Obviously, because you're listening to us now, please, if you could leave us a review and a star rating on whichever podcatcher you use, that would really help bump us up and might get more eyes on the podcast. Please make sure that you're subscribed as well whilst you're there, just so you don't miss an episode. And finally, just thank you for giving us your time this week. It's much appreciated. So for this week, Matthew, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy. Look after yourselves, everybody.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Live, laugh, love. Ta-ra.
And it's goodbye from me. And remember, be excellent to each other.